This is a true story about an American couple who formerly taught in a school in Japan. This couple taught through their words and life about the most important thing for human beings. It does not change, no matter when or where a person lives. I would like to use this story to tell you about this most important thing. It was 1920, and a young man was sailing on a ship from America to Japan. His name was Jimmy Covell. He often stood by the deck handrail and stared out at the horizon. One day, while he was there, a young woman came up to him and began to speak. "Hello. You seem to always be here. What are you thinking about?" "Hello. I'm thinking about how I can tell the Japanese people about Jesus." "Then you must be a Christian missionary, right?" "Actually, I am too." "Really? You too? This is surprising." "My name is Jimmy. How do you do?" "I'm Chama. How do you do?" From that day until the ship arrived in Japan, the two met every day at the same place and talked. The first thing that Jimmy did after arriving in Japan was to start going to a language school to study Japanese. To his surprise, Chama was also in the same school. "Hi, we meet again." "Oh, I am so glad to see you again." The two talked together every day, and in the process they discovered that they wanted to spend all their time together. One day, Jimmy said to Chama, "I have been thinking about this for a while, so I have decided to just come out and say it. Chama, would you marry me?" Chama smiled and answered, "I have been thinking the same thing." In this way, the two were married and later blessed with 3 children. Before long, Jimmy Covell became an English teacher at Kanto Gakuen in Yokohama. One day, Mr. Covell wrote a sentence on the blackboard. "Mr. Nishida, please read this." "Okay. Friendship, not battleship." "Good." Nowadays, Japanese and American relations are getting worse and worse, and there is a possibility that there may be a war. Since I love both America and Japan, my desire is for them to clasp their hands in friendship, not fight each other with battleships. The students muttered over and over again, "Friendship, not battleship. Friendship, not battleship." About that time, Japan was enlarging its country through war with other countries. At the schools, they required what was called military drill to train for going to war. Kanto Gakuen was opposed to the military drill. They thought that a school which taught about how to study and about God's love could not teach how to go to war. But a high-ranking officer said, "Since you are a person in Japan, you must do what the country says. If you do not teach military drill, you will be in trouble, he threatened. Mr. Covell was very opposed to the military drill, but in the end, a military person came to teach the students how to fight. Mr. Covell could not help but feel sorrow about this. One day, a high-ranking officer came to the school. He had come to make sure that they were conducting the military drill properly. On that day, Mr. Covell wore a black necktie like one would wear to a funeral. When he met the officer, Mr. Covell said, "What do you think? Does this necktie look good on me?" The officer, not knowing what to answer, said, "Yes, it does." Mr. Covell was smiling, but there were traces of tears in his eyes. After the officer went away, Mr. Covell told his friends in confidence, "I love this school. I feel that for this school to teach the students about war is as if my beloved school has died." About that time, Japan was at war with China and was considering going to war with America. Mr. Covell was strongly against war and taught his students to be against war. For that reason, the Japanese leaders ordered Mr. Covell to leave Japan. One cannot disobey a national order. Mr. Covell decided to go to the Philippines to work. The day that Mr. Covell was to leave Japan in June of 1939, students and friends came to see him off at the harbor in Yokohama. Mr. Covell shouted as he waved his handkerchief from the deck of the ship. The students couldn't hear his voice, but they understood what he was saying. Without a doubt, their teacher was saying, "Friendship, not battleship." Not long after they landed in the Philippines, the 3 Covell children went to America to study. Mr. Covell, who became a teacher at the Philippine University, loved his students and worked very hard to teach them just as he had done in Japan. When Mr. Covell spoke in the university worship service, the chapel was full. Mr. Covell spoke to the students. "Nowadays, the darkness of war covers the world, but we can have the light of hope in our hearts. I taught at a Japanese school, but was thrown out of Japan because I opposed the war. That is why I hate war. But even now, I love the Japanese people, and I have the light of hope that I may be able to return to Japan. I pray that you, too, will continue to have the light of hope in your hearts." December 7th, 1941, December 8th in Japan. Suddenly, Japanese planes attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Now, Japan had started a war with America. Mr. Covell said to Chalmer, "Japan is wrong in starting the war, but America, who pushed them into it, is not without fault." Let us pray for an early end to this war. Before long, the Japanese army came to the Philippines. It was thought that if they found Americans, they will kill them. So Mr. Covell and Chalmer fled with other missionaries to the mountains and built a hideaway. Mr. Covell called it Hope Valley. They hoped that when peace came, they would be able to work again in Japan. Even in their hideaway, the Covells worshipped and talked with the people of the Philippine villages about Jesus. The Japanese army heard that the Covells might be hiding in the mountains. They searched for their hideaways, but were unable to find it. But one day, one of the villagers who was working for the Covells was caught when he slipped into the village to buy some things. The soldier said, "You know where Covell's hideaway is, don't you? Tell us where it is." The villager was quiet, but the soldier said, "If you don't tell us, we will open your mouth." The soldier came with a big stick and hit the villager many times. This continued for many days. Finally, the villager opened his mouth and spoke. "Don't beat me any more. I will show you their hideaway." It was December 19th, 1943, and the people of the hideaway in the Hope Valley were preparing for Christmas. Suddenly, the Japanese army entered with guns drawn and tied everyone up. Mr. Covell said, "We are Christian missionaries. We have no connection to the war. Please let us go. Our orders are to kill every one of you. Please, at least, let the children go. Don't quibble. We will follow the order to kill everyone." Then, could we have just a few minutes? After saying this, Mr. Covell knelt with the other people and prayed. As soon as they finished praying, the soldiers' raised swords came down on their necks. At that time, the Covell daughter Margaret was studying at a university in America. When she heard that both of her parents had been killed, she cried for many days. Her parents, who loved Japan so much, had been killed by the Japanese. She hated Japan and the Japanese people. One night, Margaret was rereading her parents' letter. It was a letter that she had read many times, but that night it was as if her father was speaking directly to her. This was what was written. "I hate war, but even now I love the Japanese people. I would like to work in Japan again when the war is over." Her father's words, "Even now I love the Japanese people," vibrated over and over in her heart. It felt like all the hate faded away. Without thinking, she stood up. "That's it. This time I will work for the Japanese people." At that time, many Japanese had immigrated to America. After the war began, those Japanese were taken from their homes and placed in internment camps in different places in the country. As soon as Margaret graduated from the university, she went to one of those camps and cared for the sick and became a listener to the people who were sad. One day, a Japanese asked her, "Why are you so kind to us?" Margaret answered, "My parents were missionaries in Japan, but last year they were killed by Japanese soldiers in the Philippines. My parents hated war, but they loved the Japanese people. I have my parents' spirit in me. That is why I love the Japanese people too." Mr. Covell's hope to work again in Japan after the war was over was not granted, but we can carry on his spirit. Friendship, not battleship. Love, not hate.